I begin by reading the first part of a poem called Our Dangerous Sweetness by Amir Rabia. When I hear the news, another one of us has been killed, my heart constricts. I reach with a frantic grief towards a soothing balm, difficult to find. And I can't help but think of all the times my own life has been threatened, of all the people I love and their own lives. I am tired of being afraid to speak my name, to unbind my chest, to be feminine and masculine, to go outside. I am tired of being afraid of being brown. I am tired of being afraid of my own existence, of revealing my full self, for fear if I do, I will be killed. Here, I am the living impossibility, like so many of the people I love, who have the audacity to embrace themselves. Each day, I feel departed souls swirl, surround me. I feel thousands of hands brushing away my tears. They say, do what you were born to do. To write these words down, to write myself into wholeness, to write myself away from vengeance. They say, listen. And so I listen. For a long time, I listen. And then they say, speak to those that are still here. And so I speak to those of you still here. For me, Thanksgiving has long been a complicated holiday. When I got married, the question was, where would we spend the holiday? With my mom or with my husband's large family? Living in his home state of Illinois made that decision rather easy. But then we moved to California in 2006, and all bets were off. My mom often came out to California to visit us, and there were years that we would go up and do Thanksgiving at Camp de Venneville Pines as a family. Then we separated in 2016, and things changed again. The question became, who got our sons Duncan and Griffin during Thanksgiving? There were many years that when they did Maine Thanksgiving with their dad, and then an additional pescatarian Thanksgiving with me and my mom at my uncle's house in Oxnard a couple of days later. In 2020, during the height of the pandemic shutdown, I did Thanksgiving all by myself. My older son, Duncan, had returned to school up at UC Davis, and my younger son was encapsulated within his father's pod. I made drumsticks and sweet potato casserole and corn. This past Thanksgiving marked the second year where my mom and Griffin and I spent the day at his dad's house with Griffin's stepmom and her family and her stepdaughter. Duncan did Friendsgiving with people up in Davis, where he is currently living. Everyone got along great, and it was a lovely meal, including a 3 stuffing off to see who made the best stuffing. Mom contributed her sweet potato casserole, which is a tradition from our side of the family. Like I said, Thanksgiving is a complicated holiday. I'm sure that for some people, it is relatively straightforward. They go over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house, or to the house of whomever is hosting it this year. The younger relatives go off to play games or to listen in on the gossip of the older relatives. Some folks head to the family room to watch football or whatever sport is on. The family chefs and the people who brought food to share go into the kitchen to set up the buffet. People eat, they squabble over whether it should be called stuffing or dressing. Everyone eats too much, and then wedges in pieces of pie into stomachs that are crying out, enough already! This is what many believe is happening in homes across the United States. Without further examination, They believe that stereotypical Thanksgiving, as fed to us through an uncritical media lens, is a universal constant. Yet for many others, Thanksgiving is fraught with despair or loneliness. Divorce, death, estrangement from family, lack of friends, poverty, or inability to travel may keep folks from being able to share in this holiday with others, or they may simply choose not to. Then there's the fact that, let's face it, it is a holiday whose origins are based on the fiction that we were fed as children, that indigenous people cheerfully helped the pilgrims who landed in the New World, and a feast was had to celebrate. Truth is, Thanksgiving is a day of mourning for many indigenous people in New England and elsewhere. Then, Thanksgiving is seen by capitalist American companies as the official start of the holiday shopping season. Some stores like Costco sneak in holiday decorations in as early as July or August. Seasonal affective disorder, a type of depression, often rears its ugly head at this time of year. While it can be attributed to the time change or the early setting of the sun in the evenings, I think that for some people, it's aggravated by the onslaught of reminders of their outsider status. Folks who are single by choice or circumstance, trans and queer folk, people who do not practice the prevailing Judeo-Christian religions, the child-free, the poor, the neurodiverse. The list goes on of those people who may be ostracized or marginalized by the traditional white Judeo-Christian heteronormative family-oriented practices of the holiday season. And in the United States, these marginalized people are disenfranchised year-round. Now, I really don't mean to be a downer about the holiday season. I know that many people, especially the young, really look forward to it. I admit that even I, who was brought up as an atheist, love looking at holiday lights. I enjoy buying gifts for people, and I really get a kick out of family traditions, like sweet potato casserole. But as someone who is committed to working towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in many sectors of my life, I think it is important to look at how disenfranchisement is at play in our holiday traditions and daily lives, and work at keeping from passing down this particular tradition to our young people. Now, we've defined disenfranchisement earlier as the act of depriving people of the rights or privileges of full participation in any community or organization. Our society here in the United States is dominated by a way of thinking and acting that favors the majority culture, that is, white majority culture, over everything else and everyone else. The isms that many people experience, racism, sexism, ableism, heterosexism, colorism, and the list goes on, are systemic. They're in the system. They are baked into our society. Of course, we as Unitarian Universalists are committed, indeed are called to do something about this. It is not enough to come to church on Sundays, sing a few hymns, and call it done. No, we must resist the temptation to rest on our laurels. We must educate ourselves about the different ways in which members of our society are disenfranchised, are silenced, are shut out. And we must work to help make their voices heard.
I continue the reading of the second part of the poem, Our Dangerous Sweetness by Amir Rabia. I speak to say, my dear, beautiful people, that each time you are broken, I break. I break. I break a little more and then unbreak. I am piecing myself back together with the care of a potter's hands. I, clay phoenix. I feel the heat, of our resurrections burning to glaze our skin into glow, my fire and my kiln. Are these words, this space, the intimate threads of our connection? My prayer, we remember ourselves, is entwined in this struggle. My prayer, we undo the knots we have tied around ourselves. We breathe. We remember and can be bound together and free. I write because I feel the pulse of us chanting the names of those who have died. Our own names, our essences as holy. I envision us going on to eclipse, building bigger and bigger and bigger, more luminous, so bright. My beautiful people, our breaking is our making. And if I strip all my other identities away, I am simply a poet who listens to God, to the dead, to the living, to all left behind, to all places in between. I am simply a poet who writes these words because I believe in us, because I know an uncontainable by an alphabet. My beautiful people, let us dream towards what we want beyond survival. Let us dream towards loving ourselves till we become love. Love. Over and over again. Ah, my beautiful people, I can taste our honeyed victory. My beautiful people, our dangerous sweetness is our rebellion. So, where have you been disenfranchised? When have you been invisible? When were you not chosen? Every time there's a group. She was adopted. Being female. These are but a few of the many stories in this room, I'm sure. These are but a few of the many stories that we pass by unknowingly as we stand in line at the grocery store. But for many, many of us, people of color, people with challenges, people who are economically disadvantaged, people that are housing challenged, they feel invisible all the time. You know, when this country started, it was based upon a promise that people of color had nothing to do with. No, it was one of accumulation. Manifest destiny. God gave us this land, and we, by God, will take it. The rugged individualist, the powerful, the mighty, the industrial captains of the land. Native Americans were the first ones to be disenfranchised in this country, and then came the blacks. We couldn't leave out the Asians. Hell no, they had to build the railroad along with the Hispanics and the rest of Latin America. Asian women were exotic. Objectified. Women? Don't get me started, and don't get them started. Columbus, Lewis and Clark. Let us not forget Father Sierra. Oh, no, 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 no. Father Sierra doesn't have a prayer here, I hope. No pun intended. People were brought back in underneath the tent if they could entertain us. Yeah. And so, when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, he blew his roll, and he was punished. Win or lose. Win or lose. Win or lose. What do we teach people about winning and losing? Go out on a soccer field here in the Canal Valley and ask kids after they've lost a game if that was okay. I remember when Obama spoke. No, I'm not getting political. It's just a particular thing I want to bring up. When Obama spoke and he said, "You didn't build this," according to Romney. It was taken really out of context. What he was talking about was the infrastructure of this country allowed for many things to occur that could not have occurred without it. The rugged individualist concept, the myth is that I did it. It was me. You'd be nowhere without me. Really? What about the education system? What about the highways? What about all the tentacles that reach out to support everything that goes on in this nation and beyond? It's not about me. It's about us. And perhaps when we overcome, we will share in the generous bounty that is parlayed into the concept, actually, of truly a Thanksgiving. Your opinion?
Well, I have many opinions, as one knows. Generosity. How do we exercise generosity at a point like this, where we understand that there are so many people who do not get to enter into the generosity that is promised by our country, that is promised by all the documentation of our country, that is promised to immigrants who risk their lives to come to this country, but that's promised to children who are born to parents, to people who are getting married, people who are changing genders because they know that they are not the gender on the outside that they know themselves to be on the inside. How do we get them the generosity that they deserve? We need to work together. It's so easy to just say, "Oh, bootstraps, people, pull them up. Pull yourself up by your darn bootstraps." It's so easy to think that just voting will make a solution happen. It's so easy to think that like volunteering once a week, giving once a month will somehow solve a solution. We need to be aware. We need, and not just more than aware, we need to act. I teach two classes actually, at the university where I work as a librarian. And it's a 10-week class, so I've got 10 sessions. Every session is precious because I've only got 10 weeks with these kids. They're college students. They know everything, apparently, about the library. And it's my job to tell them, no, not quite. But I always spend one class talking about DEI, how information is twisted in a way in our society that we can't always tell what it means. And then I go into the idea that the way we interpret information, the way that information is sort of heightened in our society by the fact that it's like, oh, if it's written, it must be better than that verbal stuff. Or, hey, if they have a PhD, it's great information. We don't listen to those women at the table. Or, hey, this is like great information because these people came from a university. They weren't tribal people. The way we value certain types of information over other types of information silences people. And I teach them that. And the students sit there and just stare at me because they're awed by this concept. And I'm like, it's true, y'all. Those TikToks that you make, they may contain more truth than any article you find in a database because it's coming from you, and you may be the authority on your own truth. And they're awestruck by this concept. We need to listen to people. We need to interact with people. We need to get out of our bubbles. We need to really mesh our societies together.
And we need to invite people to speak.
Yes, we need to hear them.
Because if you don't invite people to speak, many people just don't feel like our gentleman who is the invisible boy, that they have the right to open their mouth and say anything to contribute because they feel they have nothing to contribute. And what's worse than being laughed at?
Yes. What is worse than being laughed at? Is being ignored worse?
It runs the gamut.
Yeah. I've got a little poem here. Shall we read it?
I'd like you to.
Okay. We will now read together the poem, And I Wonder Where You Are, by Tanaya Winder. Sacred stars blanket a nighttime sky, each light reminding us of the preciousness of life. Your memory lives among the Milky Way, each twinkle saying, don't forget my name. It's an epidemic, a sickness of the earth, a war we enter as soon as we are birthed. Indigenous women, girls, are two-spirit too. When did this world start disappearing you?
When did it? And when will it realign? When will you give it the invitation to realign for everyone around you?
The problems are systemic. We must work together to resolve them. Here's the thing, folks. With DEI work, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is no happily ever after. You don't come to Porky Pig saying that's all, folks, at the end. But fortunately, there's a vast, dynamic, ever-changing horizon, and you work towards that horizon, and you shift yourself to that horizon, and you make changes, and you see how it fluctuates, and you adjust to it.
And embrace the Sisyphusian concept that boulder inevitably that you've been working so hard to push up that damn hill, well, my friends, it's going to roll over you.
And you push it back up again.
And it's going to roll over you.
And you push it back up again.
And it will roll over you again. And that's perfect.
That's the way it works.
So I think for many people, it's a question of, gosh, when is ever enough?
There is no enough.
There's only ever.
But you know what? You're never alone in this. My friends, you are never alone in this.
However, there is just a small asterisk there. You see, a lot of us have partaken of justice, social justice, racial justice, however you want to frame it. And we've basically specified our particular specialty, if you will, that we're very good at. We have a lot of knowledge about. The problem is that sometimes the ground shifts under us. Women, for quite a while, thought that they were just getting over the top of the cliff. And then they realized there was a second mountain behind that. And I can promise you, as people that are BIPOC, we know there's always another cliff and another mountain behind that. That's the humor of the whole situation, no less.
Yep. But, like I said, you're never alone. We close with the words of Eric Williams. My friends, may the spirit of love be a living flame before you, a guiding star above you, a firm path below you, and a gentle presence behind you. Go in peace, go with love, go, ready to listen to voices not always heard.